What's good, guys? It's Ilsun 4K, the best kept secret on the internet. And after a long hiatus, we're finally back here at ILTV, where if you know it's pop culture, it pops up here with our favorite show of all time, Terror Talk. Now, as you can tell, we're in a new environment. We're actually in a garage now, which is very Wayne's World-esque if you want to ask me, and we're a little more organized. I mean, look, we got fucking shelves here. It's great. But anyway, we're going to keep on going right now with this little hidden gem that I found on Netflix. And if you're a horror fan and you have a Netflix account, you already know Netflix is filled to the brim with little horror gems from around the world, some of which work better when you watch them with subtitles. But this one is a little bit different and a little bit more special, and I'm about to explain why. Now, what makes this hidden gem so cool is not where it's from, but who actually created the story. Yes, this movie is actually from the mind of Stephen King, and it's based on a novella, hope I said that word right, that he created a while back. Now, what's really interesting about this is we can name all the movies that Stephen King has had turned into box office hits since the 80s. You got Carrie, you got Pet Sematary, you got It, you got everything else that he's ever made. But this is really cool because this is one that kind of slides under the radar unless you go looking for it. And the really neat part about it is how well it's done, and the actual lack of supernatural elements to it. Even though there are some, it's very minor and it's more of a suspense building affair. I'm not gonna lie, it's a fantastic movie, and we need to talk about it right now because it's something that you need to check out if you're even remotely a fan of Stephen King, and if you're even a remote fan of suspenseful building horror. So let's check it out right now here on Terror Talk, the Stephen King movie titled 1922, available only on Netflix. Totally one you cannot miss. Now, as you can guess, this film does in fact take place in 1922, which is a very interesting time to have a horror movie take place because it's a time when the world is starting to become more civilized, but not very technologically advanced. And I don't mean things like electricity or the internet, I mean things like the fact that the automobile would not become a commercially available thing for most people until the 1930s, and this movie takes place in 1922. This movie revolves around the atmosphere of a farmland in Hemingford, Nebraska, with the main character Wilfred, his wife Arlette, and their teenage son Henry. Arlette comes to find out that her father has recently passed away and actually left her the will to the entire farm, which makes Henry very happy because that means he doesn't have to go and sell the farm along with Wilfred. The thing is, though, Arlette doesn't exactly want to keep the farm and actually would like to have a different way of life, and this starts causing a friction between Wilfred and her. Now, to further explain the differences between the two and what they would like, Arlette would actually like to take the farm, sell it, and use the profits to move to the big city of Omaha and open up a storefront boutique where she could do things like sell designer clothes and perfume and trinkets and stuff like that. Wilfred, of course, wants nothing to do with this as he actually dreads the idea of leaving the farm and even more dreads the idea of moving to the big city where he has no understanding of that way of life. You see, Wilfred embodies what an American man was at the time in a farmland state. He was a hardworking man with very calloused hands and didn't have a whole lot to his name. Remember, the farm was left to Arlette by her father, but he was still proud of everything he did. He was proud of the farm, he was proud of the hard work he put in, he was a very caring father and husband, and had a really good time and relationship building with his son, teaching him how to be the same way as he was. And again, the idea of this changing causes a problem, whereas Arlette is more into the idea of modernity and also on the cutting edge of trying to move with the times versus staying where she is. And again, like I said, this is where our problems truly start. Now, of course, I'm sure some of you are starting to wonder, what about the teenage son Henry? Where does he stand on all this? Well, you see, Henry happens to fall for a very young girl, remember he's only 14 years old, named Shannon, and they hit it off great and end up in a relationship together. Now, Wilfred turns into what he likes to call a conniving man, and decides to find a way to take this love interest and use it to make Henry want to stay with him. But it doesn't just stop there. He basically tells him that, hey Henry, you know what, your mom's gonna move you away from all of this into a type of world that you're not familiar with. You're not cut out for city life. You know, she's gonna take you away from Shannon. And of course, the idea of being taken away from your teenage love is heartbreaking to think about, even if you think back to your first one right now. But the father takes it one step further by telling Henry the only true solution to fixing this problem is to kill Arlette. Yes, Henry has to listen to his father go from 0 to 100 so fast that it's unbelievable. But the only thing that's even more unbelievable is the fact that Henry agrees with Wilfred that the only way to stop this from happening is to kill Arlette, his own mother. So now, Wilfred and Henry decide to murder the mother in one of the most deceitful ways you could ever possibly murder someone. They actually decide to tell her that they're okay with selling the farm, and they decide to celebrate that night by all getting drunk and celebrating the fact that the farm is going to be sold, and they're all going to move to Omaha, and Arlette's going to get her wish. Only thing is, once the husband and son bring her upstairs, they decide to murder her in the bed in a rather cold-blooded way that you have to see for yourself, and it's truly a harsh thing to watch when you know all that you know leading up to this scene with the suspense and the tense building. Now, what they decide to do is, with this body, is the best thing to do is to actually hide it in the well on the farm. Now, this is a bit of a shallow well that looks like it only goes down about 20 feet, and Wilfred actually notices that the rats start eating his wife's body, and I guess it kind of makes him feel bad, so he decides to make it look like a cow fell into that well and fills it up with dirt so that way no one could ever see them. Now, of course, it's only a matter of time before the detectives in the area start coming around and asking questions to both the son and the husband about where Arlette is. Now, the cool part is how well the two of them pull it off together. Henry creates this affair of not knowing where his mom is and seeming very distraught, and seems like he might slip up here and there, but he doesn't. But Wilfred is the true mastermind here. Wilfred decides to take some of Arlette's clothing that she would take to run away, her good clothing only, and makes it look like she packed her bags with her good shoes and left. And it gets to the point where he has convinced the detectives and the sheriffs that there is no way that he has anything to do with anything, and they start to actually feel bad for both of them. And this is where the movie completely goes off the wall, because just when you think it can't get any crazier, Henry goes and gets his girlfriend pregnant. Yes, gets his girlfriend pregnant at 14 years old. And let me tell you, so what happens from there is Shannon's parents, of course, find out that she's pregnant, and they decide to ship her off to a boarding school for unwed mothers-to-be that are teenagers, as was the style at the time, because it was just too embarrassing for the parents to keep her around. Henry, of course, being young, dumb, and in love, tells his father he's going to go break her out, and the father says, there's no way you're going to do that. We have too much shit to worry about here, including covering up this murder of your mother, and that's that. Henry agrees with him. Until Henry actually steals his father's truck and leaves a note behind saying, I'm going to go rescue Shannon and run off and live with her, and if you try to do anything to stop me, I'll rat out the whole affair to everybody, and then we're all going to go to jail, and then you'll really see what's up. So Wilfred has no choice but to deal with this, while Henry eventually does go and break out his girlfriend Shannon, and from there they commit a crime spree together in order to survive, because again, they're just young teenagers with nothing to live for, and it ends pretty poorly for them, as you might imagine. Now, in the meantime, Wilfred is letting the entire farm, which he fought so desperately to keep, turn into a state of decay. The roof is starting to cave in, which means the snow is starting to come in. He actually gets his hand bit by a rat, and on top of all that, he's occasionally catching visions of his dead wife, who's basically talking to him and telling him things that he, as he quotes, only a dead woman would know. It is really intense how they play this all out and how the story unfolds. And the ending, to be quite honest with you, is almost the definition of bittersweet because, again, the whole idea was to keep this farm, and I'm not going to spoil anything because if you haven't seen it, you need to see the ending to see how it goes down because it's really well done. All in all, I gotta say, this is one amazingly well-written movie, and that's to be expected as, again, this is from the king of horror writing himself, Stephen King, who's been having his books turned into movies since the 80s. So again, you've got to check this out if you're interested in a plot that works on a lot of suspense and tension building. Now, as you heard me say at the beginning of this video, way in the intro, this is a sleeper find on Netflix. And that's saying a lot because, as I mentioned in the intro already, there's a lot of really cool horror movies on Netflix that are Netflix exclusives and are fantastically well done, some of which aren't even English. Now, the cool part about this, of course, is the fact that it comes from the king of it all himself, Stephen King, and the entire film is based around tension and subtlety. It's absolutely well done in a way where nothing about this film sits right with the viewer, and I mean that in the best way possible. Watching it start out simple enough with Arlette and Wilfred disagreeing on what they want to do with their future versus moving to the city versus keeping in the farm, to the fact that it gets to the point where Henry and Wilfred start discussing if murdering the mother/wife was the best thing to do given the circumstances and if there was any other way to do it. Right down to the fact that when the detectives are snooping around the home, you're almost left to wonder, is Henry, the son, going to say something he shouldn't say because he's too young and inexperienced to know how to handle lying about something so major in his life? And at no point in time do you ever feel like leaving the edge of your seat is a good idea, because that's where you stay. The edge of your seat with absolute subtlety and tension, and it's executed in such a masterful way that you really have to see it to appreciate it and understand. Making things even more impressive that build on this whole tension and suspense affair is the young love story that happens here between Shannon and Henry. It's unbelievable the fact that Henry, in the middle of all this other mayhem of having to hide his dead mother's whereabouts and lying to the police, happens to get his 14-year-old girlfriend pregnant and breaks her out. So they go on this Bonnie and Clyde robbing spree, which sounds really fun and cool, but you gotta remember, there's a 14-year-old girl in this that is pregnant. So you have to ask, what's gonna happen to her? Are they gonna live? Are they gonna die? Do they get away with it? What's gonna happen with the baby when it's born? It's a never-ending suspense of a snowball effect in every aspect of the film, including the young love part of the story, which really could have been easily dismissed given that they're teenagers. Again, it's impressive to me how Stephen King is able to take things like, for example, a low amount of supernatural activity in this movie, because while there is the dead wife visions being had by Wilfred, they're very, very infrequent, and they're not tacked on. They feel very awesome, and they give you another suspenseful tension of, is this really happening? Is he going insane? And if this woman is real, is she going to kill him? Again, masterfully done, all well tied together, and nothing feels tacky or thrown in for the sake of being thrown in because it's a horror film. Really, this movie epitomizes the statement, you reap what you sow, all puns intended, because it takes place on a farmland, if you get that. The whole idea that Wilfred really thinks that he's got everything, only to lose everything just trying to keep what he wants and being a selfish, conniving man, as he calls it, really is epitomized throughout the entire film as we watch the snowball effect that I just mentioned really turn into him just being crushed underneath the weight of his own ignorance and selfishness. The cool thing about this film that really blows me away is there's a lot of Stephen King films that don't have supernatural elements in them. A shining example of that is the movie Misery. There's a movie that has no supernatural elements whatsoever and is strictly a tension and suspense-filled way done in a much more in-your-face style than this film. This film takes that ability and sprinkles in just enough of a supernatural element that you feel the ability of it all tying together just perfectly. And that's not something we get with every single horror film that Stephen King makes. Not that any of them are bad, but the way he does this is kind of unlike anything I've really seen before. I gotta tell you, again, it's something you need to see to really appreciate it, because it kind of flies under the radar a little bit of most people wanting to watch it or even knowing it's out there, and it's something I highly suggest that you go check out, even if you're not a crazy big fan of Stephen King. But if you're a big fan of horror movies, this is one you cannot miss at all. So there you have it, folks. My take on this very awesome short story novella written by Stephen King, 1922. Again, this isn't completely unlike anything Stephen King has made, but it's definitely got its own lane. It's very unique, and it's really hard to pick a movie from his lineup that really has any remnants of this in it, and it's just so damn cool. You really have to watch it. Right now, the only way to watch it seems to be on Netflix, though maybe you can buy it on Amazon Prime. I'm not really sure. It's just a Netflix exclusive as far as I'm concerned. So again, thank you for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel right here, and also make sure you catch me out on Twitch, on twitch.tv/illtv4k, where you can catch me streaming every Thursday night at 9 p.m. We mostly do horror games, but right now with the Zelda game out, we're having a lot of fun with that, so make sure you follow me there. And last but not least, don't forget, this is IllTV, where if it's pop culture, you know it pops up here. And I'm your host with the most, IllSun4k, the best kept secret on the internet. So thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe.